shoes on in here, so
I remember.
I'm barefoot around here, so just picking up on little details like that. Now, who remembers? I had, this was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I gave us a homework assignment.
I remember.
What'd you do? Did you look at anything?
Well, I looked at the fact that I'm not a very patient man.
That's good and bad, but yes.
I work on that, so that's what I'm at.
Okay, so you look at the fruits of the Spirit, and patience was the one that hit you between the eyes the most.
The most, yeah.
Okay.
Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a fruit of the Spirit, even more importantly, right? You're supposed to be patient. And you want to test your patience. I don't know how it is over here, but in our neck of the woods, Highway 24 is what tests my patience the most, by far, by far. Anybody else take a look at any of the fruits of the Spirit and go, that's the one we got to...
Self-control.
Self-control?
Yeah.
Boy, we're kindred spirits right there, self-control, yeah. Usually mine has to do with food, I think, mostly. I love when your self-control issues, and I'm not trying to dine you out, I'm just saying. Actually, well, Heidi said, she said something, how do you phrase it? Something along the lines of, you struggle with food, and I don't struggle with it. If I see it, I eat it. No struggle at all. But maybe that's why there's a self-control issue. You know, I should struggle. There should be some crossroads, some decision where I say no. Anybody else got one? What you got?
Yeah, I was kind of like you. I'm not very kind and gentle. Yeah, at times.
I don't remember saying I wasn't kind. Gentle, maybe. And actually, I didn't say it. My family said it. So you're not like
that's
me.
kind of the way it was for me, too. In my mind, I'm pretty legendary. But,
Just asking.
in my family's mind,
But those are the two that hit you the most, gentleness and kindness?
yeah, so I've been praying about that and working on that.
Okay. But anybody else got anything? I don't want to go on from there, but. Okay. At least we're taking a look, but that's what we should be doing though, is looking at this stuff. Instead of just reading through it and go, wow, those are some great characteristics to put on. Well, why don't we put them on? You know what I mean? Like if that's the one that, you know, let's face it, God sometimes will put his thumb on something in your life, whether you want it or not. And then you're like, wow, this is like the 3rd time this week this has come up. And I think he's trying to tell me something, right? We heard a sermon years ago, something along the lines where God will start off with a small little pebble trying to get your attention, and if it doesn't work, eventually he kind of throws a boulder on your lap. And you're like, oh, he's trying to tell me something here. Well, good. Well, today is I'm not on the fruit of the Spirit anymore, but I'm on a topic we were talking before service started, that you don't really have to think of topics. Because if you've been alive for 10 minutes, things just come up. And it will be it marriage or parenting or whatever, there's just stuff. So today, this is near and dear to my heart, and it's fresh off the press because the ink is still wet, because we're still dealing with all of this stuff. And so it happens to be Father's Day this month, and so I happen to be doing some things on fatherhood, and then my son just graduated high school, and so I had some stuff there too. And so I was thinking, you know what? Let's do a message on fathering for that reason alone. But then secondly, even though most of us in here are a little older and our kids are gone, that doesn't mean that you don't have people in your lives that need help fathering, or your grandkids are coming back, or whoever it might be. And maybe if you missed the boat, like a lot of us had, it's not too late to now still keep influencing your children so that they can influence their children, because we still have a lot of growing to do, amen? I mean, like, it never ends. So the title today is called to be a Father. A lot of people don't look at that as a calling. I do, because anything that God tells you to do in the Scriptures, if he says, hey, I want you to be a man of God, and I've called you heavenward, you are called to be this person. Well, how do you know if you're called to be a father? Now, if you have children, you're called to be a father. There's step one. Oh, and by the way, if you're a man, that helps too. We're not talking about fatherhood in particular. But if those things are in place, if you have kids and you're a man, you are called to be a father. And by the way, it doesn't end. Now, the relationship might, and the rules might change a little bit. In fact, we're trying to figure that out now. Our son just graduated, like I said, a couple weeks ago, but he's still under our roof. And I told him, I said, the rules are going to change, but you will still have some. I just don't know what they are yet. I said, I'm still trying to work that through and figure out what's okay. Because, I mean, you know, all of us, I think, have discovered that when you're doing the parenting thing, that you're learning it as the kids are learning it, and you're like, that didn't work, let me try this. And by the way, it works with this kid and not with this one. And you're like, okay, this one here, I can just look at them wrong and they'll straighten up, and this one here, I gotta beat senseless about 5 times, right? And then it works. And so, anyway, so I want to look at some of these scriptures here that we got, because let's face it, Jesus and God the Father are the ultimate parents. But it says in Matthew 19:13-14, hopefully you guys can see that good. Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and to pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. You look at a verse like that, as I did, and I have the underlying portion there, don't hinder them. And I thought to myself, how many times do we hinder our own children based on our actions when, you know what I mean, they could be going in the correct direction? We're actually preventing them from drawing closer to Christ because of what we're doing. Look at the different groups involved here. So the people brought children to Jesus to have him bless them. There's one group of people right there. Sometimes we are the people who are bringing the children to the Lord, and we're the ones doing that. Other times, we are the other group of people where we're rebuking them for doing so. You ever been in church? And I used to make, well, I still make jokes about it. I'd say stuff like, get that smile off your face, you're in church, right? Because let's face it, if you've ever, you know, especially in the old days, if you weren't allowed to laugh or smile or to be children in church, you had to toe the line. Well, I can tell you right now, 3-year-old little boys were not made to sit here and go like that. They're not going to do it. Shoot, I know 20-year-olds that can't do it. So we're not, my point is, let's pay attention to what is it that God cares about? What does he think about? So I don't want to be just somebody who brings my children to Jesus so that he can do something, although there's a place for that. I don't want to be the one that's standing back here rebuking. Jesus said, don't let the children come to me. Don't let them be hindered. The kingdom belongs to such as these. So what am I doing that's hindering my children, even as they are growing older? John and I were talking before service about their son, John and Pat's son, who's in the Navy. I don't know if you guys think about this now, but what does it look like now in your parenting relationship? Am I doing anything now, today, even though you might be more in a counselor mode? What does that hindering look like? Or what does that encouragement look like? Or what does that help look like when they start having kids? You know, if you're like most of us, you're like, all right, I know we didn't do this in our house, but here's what I've learned. I would start doing this, and maybe it should look more like this. And you start going down that road of, well, I wish we had done it a little differently, but we didn't, but we learned along the way. And it's not too late, because we can pick that baton up and keep going. So the first principle that I'm talking about here is that you represent God to your children. I'm talking specifically to fathers, although mothers, you represent God too. But specifically, I'm talking to fathers that you represent God, and if you don't believe me, think of your view of God the Father today, and then think of your own earthly father, and look at how similar those things are. And I'm not joking. I did forgot what the name of that was. The Search for Significance. That's what it was. It's a little deep book. It was so therapeutic. I was still having therapy over going through this book for having the therapy. And so it was like, it was so deep in the weeds, I didn't know what to do with it. But it had you list all of these traits of God that you thought were in place. You know, was he a God that was ready to just, you know, take you out the second you stepped out of line? Was he more of a kind God, a loving God? And so you listed out all these traits. Then you got further on through the book, and it would say, now list out the traits of your father, and list out the traits of your mother, and you did all these things, and it said, now compare the two. And it was amazing. My view of God was very much shaped by my view of my earthly father. So if my earthly father was the one who was like quick to strike you down when you did something wrong, my view of God came out that way too. And so my point is that we represent God. until we are able to pass these children off to their real Heavenly Father, we are their Father, if that makes sense. And so they get there, we shape a lot of their view to this day. And so my point is, we don't have to stay there, even if we didn't do it all that great when our kids were young. It doesn't mean that we can't grow and learn and become better at it and be more intentional as time goes by still. So you represent God. They will see God as being just like you, for sure when they're younger. But even as you get older, Heidi's often saying that you can know a true Christian is mature based on their gentleness. So it's funny that half of us brought up gentleness as one of the core, spiritual attributes that we want to have. And it seems to be one that's massively lacking, at least in a lot of us guys. Although I think you said you got gentleness too, huh? All right, so glad you could join the team here. But my point is, our gentleness, if our children to this day, even if they're in their 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, if they see you becoming more and more gentle and more godly, they're going to go, that looks like Jesus. That's what this should look like. And I'm preaching to myself when I'm saying this, because trust me, I got a lot of work to do. It says in Mark 10:16, again, talking about Jesus, and he took the children in his arms, placed his hands on them, and blessed them. And I thought, that's an interesting concept in itself, and it's something that we don't really do. Have you ever thought of just blessing your children? I don't care if they're 4 or 40. Just blessing your children. When's the last time that you sat your children down in front of you on a chair and just pronounced a blessing over them? I never had that happen in my life. Not from my parents, for sure. I think we've had it from some mentors over the years. I've had people pray over me. I've had people pray, hey, hope this works out okay. I know you're injured. I hope you get healed. I've had that. But have you ever, what about when there's nothing going on? Let's say there's no chaos, there's no crisis. When they brought these children to Jesus, they brought them just so he could bless them. That was it. When's the last time you had, we should do this, not today necessarily, but we should do this as Christians for sure, but maybe even in New Song, you just have blessing day. Everybody gather around. You are going to do great and wonderful things. You are going to be powerful in the kingdom of God. You are going to, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Just saying it. Because the scriptures are chock full of examples of how our words can matter. So when was the last time that you blessed your kids just for the sake of blessing? You know that in the scriptures it talks about verbal blessings and it talks about curses all the time. A lot of times when we use the word curse, we tend to think of cussing. And in the scriptures, it's not really phrased that way. It's usually blessing or cursing. So if you tell somebody, you're going to grow up, you're going to be an idiot, right? You're going to grow up to be a jerk. Do you know that your words have some power in them, that you can actually bring that about? That you could be a self-fulfilling prophecy by saying that? Just what comes out of your mouth, you have that kind of power. But your words also have power on the other side of it, where if you want to bless somebody as well. If you say you are going to be awesome, you're going to do, we were watching something yesterday or the day before where this father would make his children hold a mirror in front of their face and say, you are a child of the Most High. You have this eternal inheritance. And he would force his children to say this to themselves in the mirror, to speak life and to speak truth. And he said it was funny because here they are 25 years later or so, they're in college, and he said every one of his kids brought a mirror with them, a specific handheld mirror, to their dorm rooms in college so that they could continue the process. And a couple of these parents said they actually caught their children having other students hold a mirror in front of their face and go, wouldn't that be awesome? But that's who we are. I mean, we have that capacity, I should say. Isaac blessed Jacob. You know the story of Jacob, where he steals his brother Esau's birthright, so he gets the biggest portion of the inheritance. But then later on, the only thing left is a blessing from the father, and that's when his mom helps him and he disguises himself with the goat hair, and he goes in and he steals his brother's blessing as well. And if you read that story carefully, there are words in there, you're like, wow, there's something to that we're missing. Because his father says, I've blessed Jacob. And he says, and he will indeed be blessed because I said it. And that's all it says. Not because God gave me some revelation and he said that this is going to happen. It's because I pronounced this is going to happen now. And so his brother says, well, don't you have any blessings for me? And he's like, kind of. I got a little bit for you. But I've already said this. And so this is going to happen now for Jacob. And so my point behind all that is I'm reading that, I'm like, what power has God enabled us to have to speak that kind of favor and blessing on people and to have it come about? So it doesn't even have to be your children, even though I'm talking about fatherhood. What about friends? What about other believers? What about other church members to go, you know what? You don't have to live in that. I'm going to speak life into that. I'm not going to speak death into that. I'm going to speak power into that. I'm going to, I think we've missed out on some of that. Hopefully I'm not getting too charismatic and too crazy, but you know what I'm saying? It's in there. It's in there is what I'm saying. What about the story of Balaam and the donkey? It says that he was specifically hired to go pronounce a curse over Israel because these enemies didn't want them. They saw Israel was taking over the land. And so I think it was the Amorites. I forget which tribe it was. I believe it's the Amorites. It's in Numbers if you want to look it up. But the Amorites and the king hired Balaam to pronounce a curse on Israel. And God specifically says to Balaam, I will not let you curse them because they're a blessed people. So he wouldn't even let him say the words, which tells me, once again, our words have a lot more power than we think that they do. That old adage, the sticks and stones will break my bone, the words will never hurt me, is a lie. By the way, they can hurt you, they can curse you, by the way, and it can bring it to fruition. So I just thought, that's interesting. Look, Proverbs 18:21 says something just like that. It says that your tongue has the power of life and death. You ever thought about that? It has that kind of power. Why does God give us that kind of power? I want God Almighty and Him only to have that kind of power. I don't want the people in my circles to have that kind of power over it. And some of us have had things spoken over us, even when we were kids, that maybe you have never broken. That maybe they have said, you're not going to amount to anything. And they have cursed you, and you have struggled to amount to anything because of that curse. That's something that you want to bring before the cross and let Jesus take that thing and break that, and you repronounce the truth. And some of our kids have had that happen. And it may not have come from us. It could have come from aunts, uncles. It could have come from other friends. It just says your words have the power of life and death. It doesn't say from who. So what if your kids or your neighbors or somebody in the church has had somebody close by who's pronounced something on them and cursed them inadvertently without knowing it? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I don't think we go out and go, I'm going to curse this person and make their lives hard, but sometimes your words are just so flippant that you're not paying attention to the damage that they're doing and what you're actually causing. I heard somebody say, I was at a conference years ago, and he said something to the effect, I'll never make any money because it's in my family line. None of us has ever made any money. I'm not going to make any money. And so I was having a conversation with him on the side, and I said, by you saying that, you're not going to. You need to undo that and not say that, and let's repronounce what God has told you, right? He says, I know the plans I have for you. That's to prosper you, not to harm you. That's what we need to be claiming. That's what we need to speak. If you say that, I'm not going to make any money, you're almost guaranteeing that that's going to happen. So, same with our kids. We don't want that to be something that comes out of our mouths and curses them inadvertently. So let's think about how we can bless our children. Let's think about how we can bless the other people in our lives. So I have a picture of a sword here. So this is a real sword that I bought my son for graduation. And I was trying to think to myself, how can I make this cool? And how can I make this last? So that sword there is kind of it's a Roman style sword. It's probably about that long. It has real ram horn in it. It's made of Damascus steel, which has these little cool little swirls in it and all this stuff. So it's the real deal. But it wasn't just about the sword. I was reading a book several years ago, and it was called Raising a Modern Day Knight. And in the book, it talks about how these guys they were going down this trail, and first the grandfather would come out and he would tell his son, like, he'd give him 2 cents worth of wisdom, you know, whatever it might be. I don't know what they were. They were little snippets. And then the grandfather would leave the trail, and then an uncle would come out and they'd walk a little further, and the uncle would say something. And then kind of went all the way down, and he had about 10 men in his life that spoke into this boy's life. And then when it got to the end, there was a campfire, and they all gathered around, and I don't know if they sang Kumbaya or what they did, but they all gathered around, and the dad came out and said, today you're a man. Today is the day that you are being welcomed into manhood. And he was talking in the book about how we don't have rites of passage anymore. You know, when do you become a man in our society? Is it 16 when you can drive? Is it 18 when you can vote? Is it 21 when you can drink, or 35 when you can become president? You know, what is there an age? It's not age specific. And so when I was thinking about my son graduating, I was like, I had it on my radar. I'm like, I want to give him this sword. I want to call him out to be a man, but not because he graduated high school, although, sure, I'll take it. When he went across the stage, I stood up and I was taking a picture, and we're at this private Christian school. There's about 150 people in the audience, maybe. As soon as he went across the stage, and it was just me being me, and I just blurted out, you see, son, proof that there's a God in heaven. And of course we laughed, because there was a time I didn't think he was going to make it. And so he made it. So I had the sword order, and then I had the second picture. You kind of see, it's in front of the stereo, about how long it is, but then I'll give you a close-up of the placard itself. And it says, dedicated to my son, Cruz, a true man. And then I put a little verse on there. It says, so be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. And there's more in that. This is King David talking to his son Solomon. And he goes, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go. But I thought to myself, if anything that King David could have come up with that he wanted to pass on to his son Solomon while he was dying, it was that verse. So I had that put on top of the sheath itself, and then I had him sit in this chair, and then I pronounced the blessing over him. You can't tell, there's probably 50 people around right at that moment, and then different people would come out, and all we did was, it was like blessing day, but it was also calling him forward as a man. And I thought, you know, I don't know how impacting it is or it's going to be, but I will tell you, when I went down there, I wanted to take a picture of the sword just so I could do today's message. My son had that sword like sitting up there with his stereo, which to me tells me it's like top of the rung. If it's up there by the stereo, I was like, so it meant, and he's brought up this sword like 2 to 3 times already in the last month. So I'm hoping and believing that it registered in his soul and in his brain the way I think it did, that today's the day. And we keep making jokes now because it was almost like the day he graduated. He got entered into adulthood anyway. He's like, man, I got insurance, I got gas, I got this, I got that, I got 2 jobs. I'm doing mad camp over at the church, and I said, welcome. That's all he said. And I don't know if I discourage him sometimes. I'm like, just so you know, it's going to get more responsibility from here. And I said, but it's just you right now, so you can do it. Third principle, your kids are on loan. They're not really your children. And like I said, most of us in this particular group are older anyway, but some of us are way older. I'm sorry, I'm just messing with you. So they're older anyway, but you know now for sure that your kids are just. Yeah, that's right. I'll look at you too, Jack. So they're on loan. We kind of know that when they're little, but you still kind of tend to think, my kids, my kids, my kids. But now that you're empty nesters and they're gone, now you really know that they were on loan, and you had no idea that God was just letting you keep them for a little bit and steering them in the way that they should go. By the way, that verse in Proverbs that says, train a child in the way he should go, I found out later on means train a child in the way that they're already bent. They're already leaning this way, and your job is to encourage them and push them in that direction. I didn't know that for the first, 15 years of my kid's life. But we figured it out before, because we just launched him. Because I was prior military, and I kept telling my son, I said, I'm not pushing you to go into the military. If all these other options drop out, though, by all means, go for it. And I said, if that's what you want to do, and he's flat out like, there's no way I don't want to do the military. I said, there are less harsh branches. You can go to Coast Guard or something and just float around, do whatever you do. I have no idea what the Navy guys do. It says in Psalm 127, the children are a heritage from the Lord. I looked that word up. It actually means gift. Children are a gift from the Lord, and offspring are a reward from Him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, or children born in one's youth, blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Heidi and I have had this conversation many times. When you get done, I'm retired from the military now. I don't look back and think, wow, I wish I'd had more years in the military, or I wish this or that. And you've heard the adage, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I don't think that. I think I wish I'd had more kids. Now, we had to pay for ours, and I tease them. And most of you guys know our story that we adopted our kids. So, and I tell them I got you at Home Depot and you at Walmart. And I can tell them all that stuff, and they've known that from day one. But we adopted them both day old, right out of the hospital, and yet they're still a total gift from the Lord. Did God really give me those children then? Yes. He just chose a different method to go about doing it, which is what we explained to our kids from the get-go. In fact, we named our daughter Keisha McKenna, and her name means pure gift. And we named her that on purpose because she was a gift to us, whatever method that was. Same with our son. We had been praying 12 years or so. I wasn't praying really as hard as Heidi. When you're barren and you can't have children, it's what's that? Higher on the Richter scale of a woman's mind. In my mind, I'm like, all right, I guess we're just going to travel and play. It's just going to be us, right? Typical guy mode, right? But I will tell you that as I look back over our years, my favorite thing and some of my favorite memories are wrestling and rolling around with the kids and or the sword dedications or whatever. Those are the things that I remember. I don't remember little trips that we took and little this or that or little dinner outings and that stuff. It's this heritage that God has given me that I remember the most. And so my son's middle name is Jaden, which is Hebrew, and it actually means God is heard. So both of our children have names that are relevant to what we were going through because we were infertile we still are. Heidi had every part ripped out of her body from her chin down, I always say. And so she, from hysterectomy, you name the ectomy, she's had it happen. And so there was no chance of us having children. And so it's interesting because there's a verse, it's in Psalm 113:9, and it says, blessed is, how's it go? Blessed is blessed is the barren woman, for she is the happy mother of children. And I remember looking at that and even memorizing that years before we had kids. It was almost like God's promise to us that you're going to have children, though you're barren. And I can promise you adoption was not on my radar. I never thought, I can't wait to adopt. It wasn't until you're forced to, I'll tell you after the fact, it was the best thing ever. And people to this day they'll look at, like our daughter, she's half Hispanic, and they'll look at Heidi and they'll see her blonde hair, and they're like, what's up with that? Or they'll look at my son, who's like 1.5 feet taller than me, which isn't hard to do, but they'll look at him and go, man, where'd you get all that from? And I said, well, I gave him everything I had, so which is not a lot when it came to the leg department. But I love that. I love how God does what He does. I'm sitting there trying to figure out why am I going to slides I've already seen? It's because I'm going backwards. That wouldn't help. Fourth principle is to raise them well. And by the way, we're still raising children and grandchildren, and it doesn't stop. If you have people in your life who have kids, it doesn't stop. Heidi and I keep talking about now they're friends of our children that are coming over, and they have no godly influence at all. And so Heidi keeps bringing up, we need to be intentional with them too. We need to give them little nuggets of blessing too. We need to, and I'm like, as stupid as that sounds, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. You'd think that would be automatic that you would just do that, but as John and I were talking earlier, it's not automatic. You have to almost be intentional, like write that down and go, okay, next time one of my son's friends comes over, I'm going to say something of value to them. And I have to like put it on a mirror or something so I don't forget. Because, I'm like, I think we're all similar. You just get to wrestling around and doing that, and you're mowing the lawn and doing this and cleaning toilets, and you just forget that there are way more eternal things that need to be occurring right now than what I'm spending my time on. Think about this week. How much time have you spent on eternal things this week? And you'd be like, that's like 2%. The rest of it, I was over here messing around with the computer, and then I made 15 phone calls, and then I did this. My cupboards are really clean, though. You know what I mean? I'm not saying there's not a place for that. I'm just saying to put it in the correct pecking order. Let's think about people and relationships and putting on, the gifts of the Spirit, or not the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. Let's clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness and humility and all the things that God tells us to do. But then let's instill that and bless other people with that too at the same time. So raise them well. You've seen this verse before from Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, do not exasperate your children, instead bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So I looked up the word exasperate, because I kind of have an idea, and I thought it meant like, don't bug the snot out of your children too much, right? Because I'm good at that. I just bug my children, or I still bug them, and I still love it. That's not what it means. It means don't have arbitrary rules and an unsympathetic rule where you just come in there and just have a rule. Get your elbows off the table. Why? Because I said so. Well, does God care about elbows on the table? Maybe. Maybe not. But you see what I'm saying? That is a man-made rule that we've come up with, that we've decided is proper. And I'm not saying that there's no place for that. But that should never take the place of what God has clearly said in the black and white. When's the last time you had a conversation with your children about purity, or about spousal selection, or about rearing their own grandchildren, or about anger, their fits of rage, the stuff that God has specifically said? He says, I want you to not exasperate them and bring up in the training instruction of the Lord, not your own little man-made stuff. I remember my dad used to just do things because he felt that way, and he hated it when you'd ask the question, why? He just would say, if you just said why, he'd go off. So we never asked why anymore. And sometimes it was a generic inquiry as to why are we doing it like this? And he took that as a threat for some reason. And I don't know why now. I mean, he's not a believer, so maybe that could give me part of it, but I don't know why he did things that he did. And there were some times that he would do things or punish us, and to this day I have no idea why. I wasn't allowed to ask why. And you know what? For a kid, that's exasperating. That's exactly what that scripture is talking about. Where you're given rules, and you're doing things, and you're doing punishments, and you're saying stuff because I said so. Well, that's not good enough. That doesn't help that person. And it's the same way when we're talking to other people. If I'm going to tell you something, it should come from scripture, and it should have some kind of biblical merit. Instead of like, and I tell people sometimes, you know what? I don't have a verse for that. Here's my gas bubble. Here's what I think. But I'll tell them that this is just me saying it. But if it has some scriptural merit, I'll be like, Trevor, you can take this one to the bank, because this is what God says. But that's the stuff that's helpful to me, not the stuff that is just arbitrary. I had a friend of mine, his kids were eating ice cream one time, too slow for his liking. That's what it came down to. And they're kids. You know what? It doesn't even make it all the way in their mouth. It was all over their faces and shirts and on the ground. And you know what? If you ever had a kid, it always looks like that. It always has. And I'm sure this dad had looked like that when he was a kid. But for some reason, the rules changed. When he became a parent, they weren't eating it fast enough. He grabbed their ice creams and he threw them in the trash can. All of them. Now, what do you think that the kids think about that? Would that be exasperating to a child? Of course it would. You'd be like, what's your problem? Right? Or you would think, or what do you think their view of God is going to be when they get older? Like, all right, my dad was supposedly a man of God, but he yanked my ice cream like that because I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. Now all of a sudden, you see how we can turn this something that could have been beautiful. Our view of God could be turned into something that is now so rule-based and so in error that you're now like, okay, I'm never going to be good enough, so why try? Right? That's exasperation. That's exactly what the scripture is talking about. I had another friend of mine, I remember Heidi and I were at their house, and these are teenage boys. And I don't kitchen. And this dad went off, screaming at him for being in the kitchen. And so they ran out, and no shock, but the parents aren't married anymore. But I thought to myself, those poor boys, I wonder what their view of God is to this day if you step over the wrong line. I don't even know why that rule was in place at all. I have no idea. It's not a biblical rule. That was a man-made house rule that they had. And there may have been a reason for it, but I don't know what it was. There was no reason for the screaming, for sure. So I will tell you this, and this is for you guys that don't yet have kids, or if you have people in your life that do have kids. Encourage them to have rules. It's okay to have man-made rules, but don't tell your kids no and say, because I said so. If you're going to say no, or you're going to say yes, you should have a reason for both of those, and make it count. Let it have merit. Why is that thing in place? And if you can't think of the reason why, then get rid of the thing. There's no reason to have that rule. Because a lot of us have rules. I wanted my kids to be kids and enjoy being kids, and I always had rules like, you know what, when you come under our roof, you can be as obnoxious as you want to be and play and do whatever until there's company over or something like that, because now you're disturbing other people. And so I say, when the scripture says to look to the needs of other people above your own, that's why that rule's in place, right? And so you can play, you can be kids, but if we go to somebody else's house, that rule's not in play anymore because you're under their roof. Now you got to go by whatever their rules are. If it's a shoe house, then you take your shoes off. If it's a whatever, right? That's okay. But then the kids get it. You know what? When you give explanations like that, they're not exasperated by that. They're like, that makes sense. I can do that. Because then when we get home, I mean, we were all over the place. And which drove Heidi nuts. I think she doesn't miss that part. She goes, it is so much more quiet now. It's so much more quiet. Last one. Still talking about raising them well. It says in Colossians 3:1, fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. So the first one was exasperate. This one is embitter. And is that in parentheses? It is good. So it has to do with the provoking. And it basically is the connotation of a horse that would run already anyway, but you take a cattle prod and poke it and zap it anyway. You're provoking and poking something that would have happened anyway. That horse was already willing. And I have another friend of mine that I just visited in Houston, and he was on his daughter like a fat kid on a Twinkie. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, just like constantly like, bah, bah. If she looked sideways, he'd be like, hey, watch your face. Hey. And she was a good, compliant daughter as far as I could tell. But he was on her 24/7. And I thought to myself, that's what that looks like. I think she would be compliant and be a good kid anyway. And he was provoking her and poking her all the time. And I thought to myself again, what is that going to look like 10 years from now when she's out of the house? Because remember, our kids are on loan. And so they're looking at you as your God. And you represent God. And then now they're on their own. Now, how is she going to view God? Is she going to view God where if she doesn't toe the line 24/7, he can, you know what I mean? I don't know what that's going to look like. So we just have to pay attention. It doesn't mean, it says don't provoke. That doesn't mean